Hey everybody, welcome back. So excited for this conversation. I actually had, of all the people we're talking to here at Summer School, that Roger's probably the one I talked to most recently. And yet I think his conversation, his content, his ideas are some of the ones that are most applicable to every single one of us. So I'm like thrilled, and I told him I even had some anticipation for what he's going to say, because I've heard some of his ideas recently, but I'm excited to dive more deeply into them and share them, unpack them here for you as we're talking about mental skills, performance at work, those kinds of things, and how they wrap together. So Roger, welcome, sir. Glad to have you.
Hey, it's great to be here. Welcome to the audience. Just glad you're tuning in to see what we're going to unpack today. So I really appreciate your attendance today.
Wonderful. I'm thrilled because as we're going through this, I hope I'm going to ask them too, but I hope you will too. Like, ask the audience to chime in, tell us what they're thinking, tell us what their challenges are.
Yeah.
Again, you coach people. You don't just talk about this stuff, but you coach people on a team and individual basis on some of these kind of things. And so I'm willing to bet you probably have some insights there as well. So before we get into all of that fun stuff, take a minute or so and tell us more about who Roger is and what Roger does.
So I'm the founder and mental skills coach for Power Mental Performance. I started this practice a little over 4 years ago to work with high performing athletes, high school and college. I work with teams, coaches, athletes, either through one-on-one coaching or in a team environment. Many times a team brings me in to be part of their coaching staff to work on the mental game, to learn how to perform under pressure, achieve goals, learning how to increase self-confidence, improve team culture, and as well as, just think about the right thing at the right time all the time. And so the sports world, a lot of people in the business world, they look at people in the Olympics or high performing artists that are singers and musicians. And, anytime there's pressure, whether it's in sports or in your professional life, we have to think about the right thing at the right time all the time. So I've been coaching for over 4 years with teams and individual athletes. And I'm not only the founder, but I'm also a client, as we say. And so I'm a competitive power lifter as a master. I compete on a regular basis. Just got done with a competition that qualified me for United States Powerlifting Association North American Championships coming up in October. So I put into practice what I preach in my day-to-day work and as well as in my competitive environment.
That's tremendous. That's exciting. And congratulations, by the way, on that. I had no clue that was also a bit of that's going to drop here. And that's so exciting to hear.
Yeah. So some people fish, they cook, they garden, they run. I power lift. So, but it's something I love and I've been doing it for a while.
It is so much fun. Awesome. So let's make that, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, the kind of parallel between the performance of an athlete and the performance of someone at work, right? So when we think about an athlete, we think about, right, they've got the muscles, they've got the speed, they've got the technique, they've got something physical, and that absolutely plays a role. But increasingly, the research I'm seeing and from insights from people like you, I'm getting the fact that mental performance is a big piece of that. It's a big chunk of that puzzle, and we've taken that for granted. We've assumed it wasn't as big of a piece, or we've overlooked it. I don't know what the reason is, but mental is as important as the physical piece. Is that true? Talk about that.
No, that's absolutely true. So if I ask, I'll ask the audience, when you think about your day, what percentage of your performance at work is mental? So think about it.
I can answer that one, like all of it, basically, right?
Yeah.
I'm not judged on how many push-ups I can do or some physical thing that I'm doing. It's all, for me, it's all like what I can come up with, the creativity, the ability to respond, having conversations with people just like you. So for me, it's all of it. And that might be high, right? But for it's pretty high for people, right?
Yeah. So depending on who you talk to, they'll say 80 or 90% of their performance is mental at work. And most people don't think about it like that. But, when you think in HR, some positions are very transactional, right? Let's think about benefit season and re-enrollment. And there's just a lot of transactional things that have to happen. And there's so many one-offs that can happen and slow that process down. And people don't sign up for the right benefits. And the call centers just get inundated with and you're just chunking out work, and it's not easy. What percentage of that work is mental? 80 to 90% of it, because mindset matters. Our performance follows our mind. What we think about matters. How we show up to work every day matters. What our attitude is like matters. What our effort is like. How focused are we? Are we distractible or are we focused? And so 80 to 90% of our work day in, day out is mental. And it's becoming increasingly more important within the workspace because there's been so much attention, especially with COVID. COVID was the game changer, I think, for people like me wanting to see HR really take a solid step forward around health and wellness. We've always done health and wellness programs, but now we're really starting to get into the mental health of our employees and developing programs and having a really robust EAP program, and really even bringing people like me on staff to work in terms of a human performance, mental performance type of aspect. Mindfulness is really becoming important. So I think companies are now seeing the benefits of it. It slows attrition down. People are more engaged. They're more productive. More services you provide to help people with their mental health and their wellness just has a huge impact. But again, if I ask the audience, do you agree, disagree, 80 to 90% of your performance is mental, be interesting to see what people think, because they probably have never thought about it like that, right? We don't.
Until you ask the question, I never stopped to think about it from that aspect. And I would like to think, I told you this before, like I'm a big reader. I love books. I'm a huge reading nerd. And so I've read a lot of things over the years that have kind of encouraged me to pay more attention to that side of my performance and how I do things, like the habits and the kinds of the ways that I structure my work.
Right.
And in spite of that greater awareness, I still had never stopped to think about how much of this is reliant on that mental, not just mental capacity, but that mental, the function, the performance, the stamina, like the focus, those kinds of things you're talking about there, not being distracted by squirrel, all those kinds of fun things, right? But it really is true. And so let's talk about, so let's say everybody's on board with us, right? They say, yes, absolutely. I'm with you, Roger. Performance is mental for us, the big focus. We need to be better at those things. What now?
What now? Good question. So some people are very structured just by nature, right? They're very organized, they're very disciplined. It's how they're wired. Others, it's a challenge. It is that squirrel. Or, in the COVID environment, it's easy to get distracted. Look, I'm working at home, you're working at home. I've got kids at the house. I got 2 dogs and a cat, and you never know what's going to show up on a call today. We could be sitting here and my dog could just rush in, but there's a little bit more distractibility. So how do we build in a system? So think about it as a system and break it down into micro steps. Here's just a real easy way to start that process. It's a skill. That's why we call it mental skills. So just like in HR and in any profession, we had to do some things rotely and routinely to develop that skill. We had to put a little bit of structure and organization into that. So one thing that really helps me is I've got in the habit of saying, what's important now? WIN, what's the win? What's important now? And so, sitting down and going, okay, what's important now? So 30 minutes ago, I said, what's important now? Looked at my calendar and said, Ben's important now. And talking to your audience and getting ready mentally and thinking through some things that we could talk about. So when you routinely sit there and say, what's important now? What's important now? What's going to be my win for the day? What's my goal for today? Start with the end in mind and work backwards. What are going to be those steps, in the process to get me there? So it's what's important now. And it really is focusing on the process. And that's a habit we pick up from Olympians and high performing athletes. They don't get really results oriented, which is the interesting thing. So if you think about a track athlete, my son runs track and cross country. We have a goal for a time, but then we break down his training and we break down what he does day in, day out. And that's what we focus on. So what are the mini goals for Monday? What are the mini goals for Tuesday? And you start breaking it down little bit by little bit. And you honestly, because one of the things we have found in sports psychology is when you focus so much on that goal and that result, it actually takes you out of the zone you want to be in,
Hmm.
because you're obsessing over the result or the goal versus being laser focused on what the process is to get to the goal. High performing athletes only focus on process. And so how does that work in my day to day? I set my goal for the day. I know what I want to accomplish, but then I break it down into small chunks and I focus on the process to get there. So it could be an hour by hour thing. What's important now for the hour? Accomplish that. What's important now for the second hour? And you have to develop it. Be compassionate in the process, because we all will get distracted, squirrel, wife comes in, husband comes in, son, daughter, fill in the blank. There's always something distractible. We all get those emails or calls. Hey, can you fix this right now? And it kind of blows our calendar up. But then you regroup, you come back to what's important now, and you focus on the process. And you just got to take those baby steps I mean, it's skill development 101, and it's just sticking with the process and having a little bit of an enduring spirit, a compassionate spirit. If you make a mistake or don't get to where you want, don't beat yourself up, just kind of move on to the next. And over time, you will develop that mental skill.
I love that. Looking at it as a skill, right? Think about it like a muscle. You've got to build
Yeah.
this. No one is born with the ability to say, this is a decision point in my day, and I'm going to have to make a choice here between A and B, and they're very clear and understandable paths. Most of the stuff we do day to day is not that clear. It's undefined results,
Yeah.
right? Or the path may be a little bit fuzzy, and we've got to make these decisions sometimes with limited information about what's going to actually happen at the end of this, things like that. One of the things you said, though, the win, what's important now, asking yourself that question. And I encourage anybody listening to this, think about that as you're going through your day. Like, when is the best time to ask that? Right? When's the best time for you to stop and say, what's important now? Like, after you finish a big meeting, right? Or after you finish a call, when you take a break from your inbox, right? Things like that. There's a book that I love that you'll appreciate, Roger. Probably recommended it last year, actually, on Nature Summer School, because I love it so much. It's called 2 Awesome Hours. And in the book,
2 Awesome Hours.
yes, in the
Okay.
book, the gentleman that wrote, he's a doctor, but he writes, it's very down to earth, and it talks about how you make decisions day to day and how you perform at work. And so it's very much aligned with the conversation. One of the things he says, in your what's important now, stuck with me, is he says, one of the biggest things you got to get a hold of, it's not that you've got to suddenly snap your fingers and have a great habit at focus, or snap your fingers and just be really productive. It's when those decision points come up, you have to see them and intentionally choose a path. If you don't, if you just like let your brain slip into that neutral gear, idling like it just wants to do, it wants to do that, then you'll find yourself in your inbox an hour later, like, I haven't done any of those things that were on my to-do list that Roger said, like, I need to plan my goals. You've completely ignored all of that in favor of using your precious mental energy responding to a bunch of email.
Right.
So things like that, like those decision points, like your what's important now, asking that question and thinking about where those points are for you and for me and for everyone listening into this, those are critical things. And it sounds simple, but getting a hold of that and just recognizing those moments is a powerful start to this whole process.
Oh yeah. And again, it's a process. You develop that habit, and it does get easier, and it helps you stay focused, because when's the best time to focus? Well, when you lose focus. And so it's like, when do you realize you lose focus? You realize you lose focus when you lose focus. And people will go, oh, I just kind of vegged out for 15 minutes. Let me get back on track. What's important now, and work your process. And the cool thing about focusing on process is the results end up taking care of themselves. So when I coach athletes, let's set the goal, but let's get the plan to get to the goal, and let's work the process. And the results are always a positive byproduct of being very intentional about working your process and those many habits and those many goals throughout the day. You will hit the result if you focus on the process and you do it well. And again, it's a habit. We develop it. It's, be patient with yourself, and it works over time.
So you've given us a good way to start to think about this, right? Asking that question, thinking about what's important now. Are there other types of habits or other types of things we need to be thinking about in this whole mental performance piece? Because again, we could talk for an hour probably on how to be more resilient, right? How to handle stress and everything else. We could talk for in a ton of different directions. I'm hoping you can give us another practical something, another piece of advice here as we're thinking about this, because I want everyone that's listening not just to say, okay, I'm making those, I'm being more aware, which is a great start to say what's important now, but also what else is there? Is it doing some of what you said? Is it being more intentional about setting goals and micro goals day to day? Is it something else that I don't even know about because it's not that I'm not aware of, but I'd love to be writing it down with my friend over here taking notes? What's your thought there?
Yeah, you know, for me personally, this is probably one of the most underrated skills for anybody dealing with pressure. And it doesn't matter if you're a single mom at home managing kids. It doesn't matter if you're a school teacher teaching middle school and middle schoolers are just driving you crazy, or in the HR world where maybe we're dealing with
Hiring manager issues or
oh yeah, so
problem
performance
employee or
issues, grievances, EEO maybe type things that are really really troublesome, and very, it is the intentional practice of breathing. And what I and people look and they do what you just did to go, really? Are you serious? And it's like, yes.
I'm writing it down. I'm writing down breathing, but give me some parameters
So
on that because I'm already breathing and it might not be
yeah.
doing the job.
So we get really intentional with our breathing for the sole purpose of learning to relax and slow the mind down. What most people don't realize is when they get into a stressful situation, and HR can be stressful, we don't breathe properly. It almost leads to a subtle hyperventilating, and we don't even realize we're doing it. And when your brain can't get oxygen, it's a bad day. And so it is the intentional practice of what I call a circle breath, where you breathe in through your nose for a count of 4, you hold it for 2, and then you exhale slowly for a count of 6. And you count while you do it, and you do the breathing. And what it does is it slows your heart rate down. It allows your brain to get oxygen. It allows you to think clearly. And what it does is it puts your mind in sort of not sort of, it puts your mind in a neutral state. So you're coming from that maybe tough situation, that stressful situation, and getting into a neutral state where you learn to relax. And athletes do that, and that's how they stay in the zone, where they're relaxed. They're not too high, you know, they're not too low, they're neutral. And it allows you to respond in a better way. And so when you think about performance, we always want to respond well. We want to be intentional with what we're doing. And so many times throughout the day, I'll just when I'm like, okay, I'm frazzled. I'm not myself. I'm stressed. It literally is just sitting in my chair and relaxing for about 2 to 3 minutes, taking some nice, long, slow, deep breaths. And then I come back to, okay, what's important now? It's just a way to reset. It's a way to reset. It's a way to reset. It's a way to reset. And the funny story around this is I was working with a high school football team a couple years ago, and I was teaching this. And these big linemen, offensive, defensive, they just looked at me like, Coach, you're like crazy. Anyway, we would go through these, I would take them through these different breathing exercises. And then lo and behold, we go into a game that season. It was against an arch rival. There was a lot of talk and smack between social media, between the high schools and the athletes. And the team I was working with just, I'll be honest, they murdered the other team. I mean, it was a big blowout. So after the game, everybody was out on the field and I'm out there, big offensive linemen come around me and they're like, Coach K, we thought that stuff you taught us was stupid, but you know what? It works. And it's funny because I'm like the small guy with these big offensive linemen. And the one guy goes, yeah, it helped me reset every play. And so I always tell people, I say, look, what I teach is different. It just is. Let's put it out there, because when you want to get bigger, faster, stronger, you can lift weights, you can go to the track. Even if you're learning how to cook, you work on recipes and you work, you know, you practice your craft in the kitchen and you make mistakes and you learn how to get through it. I said, what I teach is just different, because I'm teaching you to think differently. I'm teaching you to respond differently, and you can't grab a barbell or you can't grab a bowl and you know, mix up something for a recipe. I said, you're working internally inside your head with your emotions and feelings. I said, so it's just going to be different, but keep an open mind, practice it, get into a place. It's going to be, let's just say it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel disingenuous, but be vulnerable to go there. Just open up and trust the process, and just have an open mind and stick with it and try it. So the breathing, coming back to your question, has always been big for me. And I love it. It just helps me stay centered. It helps me reset, and it helps me perform.
I'm going to be using that for my mental performance as a parent, of course, for small children. And I'm going to
Look, every HR professional in the audience should be practicing circle breathing 4-2-6 every hour on the hour, because of what they may see through the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's one of those things that sneaks up on you. Like you said, even you know, captain skills coach over here, even you get caught. Sometimes you're like, whoa, you know, I've just gotten a little bit too much, a little bit overstressed, and need to just back it off a little bit. And so if it happens to you, absolutely, right, it happens to us. And building the habits, that's what I wanted to get out of this conversation. I think we really touched on a couple of them that matter. Building those habits, building parts of this that you come back to. That falls first, yes, weird, strange, different, right? I gave you that look a little bit when you said it a minute ago, but I wrote it down, right? 4-2-6.
Yeah.
Because this leads to new and different habits. If you want to keep getting what you've always gotten, keep doing what you've always done. And there's another way of saying that. You want to try something different, you want to feel different, try something different, and you'll get that. So if someone wants to know more about you, Roger, the work you're doing, just to connect with you, obviously you can click on his name right there in the chat and connect right over with him here on LinkedIn. But is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, so I want to go back to one other habit before I give out my information, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
So I'd say the other thing for the people in the audience, and this is a big one, control your controllables. So think about all the stuff we think about. When we start feeling stressful or anxious, we're probably concentrating on things we can't control. Crazy coworker, crazy boss, stuff going on at the house, fill in the blank. There's all kinds of things that we can't control. And so I'd tell people on a sheet of paper, put a line in the middle, a line across the top, and make a list of everything that you can control, and make a list of everything you can't control. And you'll see that list of uncontrollables is huge. When you look at what you can control, it's a much healthier list, and it really falls into 3 buckets. It's attitude, effort, and focus, because those are things I can't control. And you train your mind to stay on the controllables. So I think this will resonate really well with our HR folks. Just control what you can control, and you take your mind away from things you can't control. And then the other habits of the win and the breathing make those controllables easier to execute. So just one final parting shot on another habit to develop.
Absolutely. I'm always a sucker for one more good tip or piece of advice. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So contact information. I'm on LinkedIn, Roger Kitchen. So you can see my profile. My company's also there, Power Mental Performance. So if you just search for either of those, you can find me. I'm also on Instagram, Roger Kitchen Jr., and then Facebook, Power Mental Performance has a page there as well. And then all my contact information is in those locations, and people can reach out to me. And I'm accessible by phone, text, whatever. And we just love to connect with folks, help them improve their 80 to 90% mental performance at work. And look, let's get to it. Let's control our controllables. Let's go for the win for the day, and let's work our process. And don't forget to breathe while we're doing it.
Awesome. Wonderful. Roger, I appreciate you so much, sir, for joining us, for sharing your wisdom, your expertise, your passion for this space, and for this conversation, because I think, again, as I kind of pointed out at the very beginning, nobody probably said, hey, I can't wait to go to an HR event to learn about mental skills. And yet it's something that every single one of us can put into practice, not just next week, but today and tomorrow and every day after that. So I appreciate you for hanging out with us, and everybody else. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Be sure to click over to Roger's profile, connect with him, follow him in all the places, and we'll catch you with another conversation on HR Summer School coming right up.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it.